This is the part of my duty where I set everything in the middle, try to keep everything up. At some point in time, I was creating pieces almost on the same line of artifacts, and then I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. I said, because that's what my Maori's brother called regurgitation. Hey, you're regurgitating. Then I finally realized, okay. Being that we had done a book, Men of Ancient Hawaii, then I said, okay, let us talk about navigation. Let's talk about the kilo, the navigators, those guys that knew about the stars, those guys that knew about ocean currents, those guys that knew about the heavens, those that, ilalo, iluna ilalo, yeah, what is above reflects is below, right? So I created this and I titled this Kilo. And it was based upon the navigators. And this is supposed to be a navigational bowl. That's why the grid, they use these bowls to, and they would use some of the star charts where they would use cauries to denote islands. Yeah. So this is basically the same idea, the same concept, but all in the 21st century. Not again regurgitating, as my brothers would say, but to be reflective of what they were doing and be reflective of the things that they knew well. And this is what I wanted them to understand. So these are the new ideas that I keep toying with, because the fact that, again, we don't want to go back to the old places again. I don't want to just regurgitate. I'm tired of that. This was titled Kalai, the carver. Just the carver, just the Kalai, with the adze, the ko'i, which is made of spruce, and koa. This is all, by the way, these pieces were all pieces that was the drop-off from the Hawaii Lore Project. Everyone stood there going, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do with them? And after a while, when I started creating these things, I thought more in terms of those that did the work. We never talk about the builders. We always talk about those that finally get on deck, those that sail it. We never talk about those that worked it. So working with Ray Bowman Jr., he taught me a lot about his ability to see wood, his ability to fix canoe hulls. He taught me a lot about another facet of woodworking. But coming away from that, I became very reflective of those that put in time and energy to this project, and that immediately was forgotten. I mean, we were like the unsung heroes, yet they, in ancient times, these are the most important people of the culture. Without those that did the things with their hand and eye, with their mind and hands and mind, yeah, the working of the hand, I mean, your culture pretty much sits dead in the water. The idea that I've always keep reflecting on is what the future holds for us. What footprints, what imprints will be left on the younger generation? How do you do this? How do you manifest these kinds of ideas? Well, if you're sticking with a cultural philosophy, and if you are talking about the cultural aspect of our people, then historically there's a lot of things that make sense. But if you have forgotten some of these historical values, then the process you have by this time will be made up. You will start to insert modern thinking and modern concept, and then, as we say, things get lost in the translation. And a lot of times with language, it's not so much the translation that we're concerned with, it's interpretation of that language. You remember, history was not written in English, it was written in our language. And if we have to understand how that future will hold for us, it's finding the devil in the details. So this is why I was able to promote or push my thought concept further, because we need to continue living. A culture is not a dead culture where you do just lay it in the corner, some dusty corner in the museum. It continues to grow because your mind is there and seeing the changes that takes place in the world. And you are part of that change. A lot of carvers do it just for the time when it suits them. They don't fight for those things that should be apropos to their work. They're not involved in trying to shore up certain areas that need to be shored up in order to allow themselves to be competitive or allow themselves to be involved. Just to give you an idea that every heiau had over 100 ki'is, 100 images. And then today we don't have any. So when someone carves one, they think that's it. I did one. I did a coup. You know, it took me forever to do this coup, but you know, I finally did it. So that's why I said, have you seen the monument? Because, you know, to me, your work never ends. Because again, if that was your job as those who bear the culture, the responsibility, the kuleana of being who you say you are, you know, I've been that for 30 years. Not only as an artist, I do illustrate. I do draw. That was my fun and game. That's what I taught myself to understand. But when it comes to carvers, there are no teachers out there. When I first came home, there was no one I could go to and say, hey, there's that old guy down the road there, and you know, he used to carve. Why don't you go ask him? There was no one. The only people that carved were those in the prison. And even that, they did away with that program. So then after that, there were no such thing as carving. So every time when they saw me with carving, they said, well, you learned this in prison. And I said, no, I'm an educated man. How about that? So then they stopped, because then they realized they made a big mistake by what they said.